Breaking news shook the world as Ukraine carried out one of its boldest and most daring strikes of the war. So far, targeting the Crimean Bridge, a structure that has long been considered the pride of Russia and the most important supply route for its forces in the south. The attack was not just another strike. It carried both symbolic and strategic weight. The Crimean Bridge is the physical link between mainland Russia and the Crimean Peninsula, and its destruction or damage represents not only a logistical nightmare for Moscow, but also a political humiliation for President Vladimir Putin, who once showcased the bridge as a symbol of Russia's permanence in Crimea. Hello my friends, welcome back to my videos. Today we will look closely into this powerful incident, break down its background, and review every angle including the structure itself, the performance it delivered, the safety features meant to protect it, the unique importance that made it such a high-value target, the staggering costs attached to its construction and now its destruction, and finally, what it all means moving forward. The story begins with the bridge itself. Constructed after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, the Crimean Bridge was opened in 2018 as the longest bridge in Europe, stretching nearly 19 kilometers across the Kerch Strait. It connected Russia's Krasnodar region with the Crimean Peninsula, effectively solidifying Moscow's claim over Crimea and ensuring a steady supply line of goods, fuel, civilian traffic, and, most importantly, military logistics. From the very beginning, this bridge was not just concrete and steel. It was a symbol of Russia's control, of Putin's personal pride, and of Moscow's message to the world that Crimea was not going to be given up. Billions of dollars were poured into its construction, and Russia celebrated its completion with massive ceremonies. But behind the pride, the bridge always carried a weakness. It was a single, vulnerable link. Unlike multiple supply routes spread across a region, this bridge was a bottleneck, and that meant if anyone could successfully hit it, the impact would be enormous. Ukraine understood this very well. For months, analysts predicted that Kyiv would eventually focus its efforts on crippling the Crimean Bridge. Its destruction would not only limit Russia's ability to resupply forces in occupied southern Ukraine, but also send a psychological shock across the Russian population. When the strike finally came, it was a dramatic moment. Explosions tore through sections of the roadway, leaving massive gaps in the structure, and flames lit up the night sky. The images were circulated globally, showing how a bridge once considered untouchable was reduced to burning wreckage in minutes. The symbolism of the moment was impossible to ignore. Russia had built the bridge as a show of permanence, and now that permanence was in ruins. From an external perspective, the bridge had been designed as a marvel. Engineers built it with reinforced steel arches, strong pillars anchored into the seabed, and roadways capable of carrying tens of thousands of vehicles daily. It also included a railway section designed to transport freight trains loaded with fuel, military hardware, and supplies. Its scale made it one of the largest projects in Russia's history, a structure stretching like a giant thread across the Kerch Strait. But for all its strength and beauty, the strike revealed the fundamental truth about war. No structure is immune. Externally, what was once sleek, strong, and majestic was suddenly scarred, twisted, and broken. Inside, the meaning of the bridge was even greater. Beyond the concrete and the steel, it represented the lifeline of Russia's war machine in southern Ukraine. Every day, thousands of tons of supplies flowed across it, from food and fuel to ammunition and weapons. Trains loaded with tanks and armored vehicles rumbled across its tracks, while convoys of trucks carried materials needed to sustain Russian troops fighting hundreds of kilometers away. Internally, the bridge kept Russia's southern front alive. But once it was struck, that heartbeat slowed dramatically. Russia suddenly had to scramble for alternatives, rerouting supplies across long and insecure land routes, or relying on ferries vulnerable to further attack. The performance of the bridge under normal conditions was nothing short of impressive. It was capable of handling 40,000 vehicles daily, with lanes designed to keep traffic moving smoothly across the massive span. Trains could carry thousands of tons of cargo in a single journey, and the bridge stood as a symbol of efficiency, but performance means nothing once under fire. Ukraine's precision strike, whether through drones, missiles, or a combination of both, demonstrated that modern warfare is not about how strong a structure is, but about how vulnerable it can become when the right weapons are used. In a matter of moments, years of engineering were rendered useless. The bridge that had once performed flawlessly was suddenly out of service, a broken chain in Russia's military logistics. Russia had attempted to make the bridge safe. Security was considered one of the top priorities. Anti-air missile systems were deployed around it. Naval patrol boats constantly moved through the waters below, and soldiers maintained checkpoints on either side of the bridge. Surveillance systems were installed to detect threats early. Yet all of these safety measures failed to stop Ukraine's strike. The lesson was clear. In modern warfare, even the tightest security can be penetrated. The attack proved that Russia's safety features were either inadequate, outdated, or simply overwhelmed by the precision and planning of Ukraine's operation. It was an embarrassment for Moscow, which had promised its citizens that such an important project would be well protected. The unique selling points of the bridge explain why it became such a priority target. First and foremost, it was a political symbol. Putin himself had personally driven across it during the opening ceremony, smiling for the cameras as he crossed into Crimea. It was meant to show the world that Crimea was permanently part of Russia, tied not just by politics but by physical infrastructure. Secondly, it was a critical military asset. For the Russian army, it provided the fastest, most secure way to move supplies into occupied territories. No other route could match its capacity and reliability. And third, it carried immense psychological importance. For ordinary Russians, the bridge was proof that Crimea was safe and connected. By striking it, Ukraine not only damaged a supply line, but also struck at Russia's sense of pride and control. The price of the bridge, both in terms of money and political capital, was staggering. It cost billions of dollars to build, making it one of the most expensive infrastructure projects in Russian history. That alone made it a symbol of Putin's rule, a project he could point to as proof of Russia's engineering power. But now, the cost of its destruction multiplies the loss. Not only will Russia need to spend enormous sums to repair or rebuild the damaged sections, but the political price is even higher. It undermines confidence at home, makes Russia look weak abroad, and gives Ukraine a major propaganda victory. The bridge that was meant to cement Russia's hold has become an example of its vulnerability. In conclusion, Ukraine's strike on the Crimean Bridge is far more than a simple act of sabotage. It is a masterclass in strategic warfare, combining symbolism with real military impact. It cuts into Russia's supply lines, humiliates Moscow politically, and boosts Ukraine's morale at a crucial time in the conflict. The bridge once represented permanence, power, and pride. Now it represents fragility, weakness, and the reality that no matter how powerful a nation believes itself to be, its lifelines can be severed. For the global audience, this strike is a reminder of the unpredictability of modern war and the ingenuity of those who fight not just with weapons but with strategy. For Russia, it is a wound that will take years to heal. For Ukraine, it is a moment of triumph that will be remembered as one of the boldest moves of the war.